Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited to be doing this presentation. I'm a little bit sad it's not in person, but it is what it is, and I'm nonetheless excited to talk to you guys. The first part of this presentation will provide an overview of studying health at QUT, and then we'll end with answering some frequently asked questions. The other presenter today will be Quinn, and he's going to help me share some frequently asked questions. If there is some time at the end, we're definitely going to have a chat and answer any of your other questions. So before we get started, QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nation owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits. We recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. QUT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. So a little bit about me. I'm a QUT Senior Student Ambassador here. My job is to talk to you guys about QUT and what I get to do, and I love this job. I'm a fifth year student here doing biomedical science and law. I finished my biomedical science degree last year. Now I'm straight law. I actually have minors in history, cell molecular biotechnology, and infection and immunity. Next year I'm planning on doing a PhD in bioethics and health law. And in my spare time, I love to go down to the coast and go surfing. I love traveling and I love eating good food. I'd like to introduce Quinn.
And I'm Quinn. I'm also a senior ambassador here at QUT and also love my job just as much as Sinead. I'm in my fourth and hopefully final year of Bachelor of Clinical Exercise Physiology. I'm on track to pass, so shouldn't be too much of a worry. And my current interest area is oncology. So for those of you who don't know, is working with cancer patients. So be that before they've started their chemotherapy, radiation therapy, hormonal therapy, during that process or afterwards, if it's more the rehabilitation side. Just because I like having a bit of a chat with them, have a yarn, try and take their mind off that whole ordeal. Obviously, also while I'm hopefully improving their health and fitness. And I also just enjoy playing social netball and volleyball, and I'm a big advocate for a nap after class.
Thank you, Quinn. We're all about that napping life. Okay, so let's get started. Why should you consider a career in health? A career in health is the #1 top employing industry in Queensland at the moment, and it's likely to stay this way until May 2023. And as you are all probably well aware, healthcare professionals are not going anywhere. People will always sadly be getting sick, and we're always going to be needing people to help them. Another awesome factor is that a significant number of jobs have been added over the last decade. It's just an amazing place to go into healthcare because we are always going to need these jobs. So why choose QUT if you're considering a health degree? Careers in health, they're not all fast-paced emergencies, and they're not all working with blood or bodily fluids and internal organs. Health careers generally fall into one of the following. I really like to break it down because there are so many health degrees out there. It's hard to know which sort of category you fall into and where to start looking. The first is patient care. So this is what Quinn does, basically working one-on-one with a sick patient and trying to improve their health back up to that average healthy Australian line. This could be nursing, this could be paramedics, this could be clinical exercise physiology or psychology, podiatry. It's helping patients one-on-one. If that's you, awesome. The next category is community and public health. So this is improving the health and well-being of entire communities. Now, it might not just be a community within Australia. It could be a school community. It could be a nursing residence community. And there are so many different ways to improve health. It could be through policy governance, social work, advocacy, could be in education. It could be, I know the Minister for Health and I think Sport in Queensland introduced a new sort of handout to help students a little while ago. I thought that policy was amazing. So if you're interested in improving exercise in students, this could be the way to go. The final, I'm always going to be a little bit biased about this, is health and medical science. Biomedical science and medlab fall into this. So if you love health and you love cells and biology and you love human medicine, but you're really not interested in working one-on-one with patients or even working with them from a distance, your whole passion is focusing on that science, then this is the way to go. Because in order for a nurse or a doctor or a clinical exercise physiologist to dish out treatment, we have to figure out what that treatment is and why they need it. So hopefully you can sort of figure out where you fall into one of these categories. But let's look at the individual degrees. So as you can see on the screen, we have a number of schools and we like to group the degrees according to which other similar degrees share sort of the same subjects. Hopefully you can affiliate with one of the degrees on the screen. However, one thing I do want to point out is that, say you're looking at a nutrition and dietetics or a medical imaging or radiation therapy or optometry, one of those degrees with a higher OP or ATAR level, there are other ways to get into them. So as you can see on the screen, medical imaging, radiation therapy, pharmacy, some of them share really, really similar subjects in the first year. So if you guys have any questions about admission into these higher degrees, we can definitely point you in the right direction into which degree you maybe would like to start and then transfer into one of the other degrees on the screen. I am doing a double degree in biomed and law, so I cannot get past this slide without hopefully getting some of you guys on board with double degrees as well. So by studying a double degree like nursing and paramedic science, I know a lot of students who do this double degree to see which one they like, because they're kind of similar careers, they're kind of similar degrees, and they're not really sure which one to do. So one of the reasons to do a double degree is to try and figure out which way you want to go. Another awesome reason to do a double degree is, like me, in school, I loved biology and legal studies. I adored it. So I went on to do biomedical science and law. I tried doing a biomedical science research program. I've tried doing some work at a law firm, and I've sort of found that neither of those things really work for me. What I'm really interested in is bioethics and health law. So issues like abortion, surrogacy, assisted reproductive technologies, genetic engineering, that's my niche. So if you have sort of two areas and you're not really committed entirely to each one, you want to make your own niche, doing a double degree is the perfect idea for you. You also complete these degrees in a shorter time, you pay less, and you come out with 2 networks in 2 professional areas as well. So you have a broader range of skills and knowledge, giving you a competitive advantage and greater career flexibility. I cannot recommend double degrees enough. And I'm just going to hand this over to Quinn.
So not only does QUT offer, as you've seen, a wide variety of health courses at QUT, but we've actually got a few here that are exclusive to QUT in Queensland. So for health information management, it's quite a new degree and combines areas of business, obviously, management, information technology, and health. This has actually become quite a prominent area in the few recent years, with the whole move from your paper patient forms to the e-system. So it's really important that these people can collect all that data and make sure that it's being an effective patient handover between different areas, so potentially from a GP to a psychologist or a GP to a dietitian, making sure that it's all being recorded properly. Radiation therapy, quite a specialist degree, so this is focusing on applying radiation therapy for cancer patients, and you've got those facilities at QUT, and obviously when you go out on prac sites as well, we're actually getting to use that equipment for real. And then we also do have our Bachelor of Vision Science that transitions into the Master of Optometry, obviously working all around the eye, really focusing on that specific area, what can go wrong, how to treat it, as well as prescription glasses and stuff like that. If we can click through the next slide, Sinead, just because I don't have control. Not only do we have a few exclusive degrees, but we're actually the first provider in Queensland for these 4 here. So medical imaging, as Sinead said before, one of our most competitive degrees, not only in health, but at QUT in general. Very specialized, again, focusing on becoming a radiographer. So, taking your x-rays, MRIs, CT scans, and again, getting to use that equipment from your first year onward and accumulating lots and lots of hours, which I'll talk around later, in your practicum and placement opportunities. Our School of Nursing, our nursing degree, has actually been around for more than 40 years. So not only is it sort of tried and tested, but it's updated accordingly, depending on whatever evidence comes out each year. And not just for nursing, but pretty much all of our health degrees, your academic staff will be practitioners in the field. So they know what's expected as a graduate, and obviously updating that course structure and unit outlines as new evidence comes out. Similarly with paramedic science, actually this year in 2020, we are celebrating our 15th year of teaching paramedic science at QUT. And again, another very refined course. Again, pretty specialist area. You're going on to become a paramedic. And over those 15 years, we've really created those relationships with the QAS, so the Queensland Ambulance Service. And obviously our teaching staff are still, or have been, paramedics. So you know that you're getting that first world real experience from your teaching staff. And last but not least, podiatry, which isn't just feet, guys. It is the lower limb. So generally from your hip down. have great opportunities, not only just being a first provider in Queensland, but we actually have the QUT Health Clinics, which has a podiatry centre there. So you've got real patients coming in off the street and generally book in, where you're actually getting to obviously get that patient care. I believe it's over 1,000 hours over the course of their degree. Hopefully my connection's saying it's a little bit unstable. Hopefully you heard all of that. We'll just click to the next slide. So that's a good transition. Obviously, podiatry has that 1,000 hours. Medical imaging, radiation therapy have very similar, but a lot of or pretty much all of our degrees in health will have some element of practical experience. And in 2019, across all of the students, I wish I could say it was just me, the health faculty completed 1.5 million hours collectively. And this isn't just necessarily in, the private practice or hospital setting. This can be in, the wider community, be it, as Sinead was saying before, going out to a nursing home or a school, implementing that more public and community health area, or it might be working in a government department in a research sort of field. So it's not necessarily, like Sinead before, the blood and guts in a lab, that sort of stuff. You've got this experience to go out and work with real people. Also with that, we do have the opportunity in the Faculty of Health, although a little bit more limited than other faculties, there are opportunities to study overseas. You would have picked up now with how much practicum we've got to do that some degrees won't have the opportunity to do, a 6-month or a year exchange program, because you do have to get accredited in Australia and do those hours here. For those degrees that are available, we do have over 40 partner institutions around the world where you can go and study a semester overseas and get it accredited. But for a degree such as mine, clinical exercise physiology, although I couldn't study for 6 months, say in the UK, I had the opportunity to go on a short-term study tour to Hong Kong for a week. Well, 2 weeks, because I put a little bit of holiday either side of it, where I actually just learn about the different healthcare systems, the aging population in Hong Kong, and how exercise and nutrition could actually be a very big benefit to that aging population for more preventative measures. And obviously, you've got those opportunities in those more strict degrees, maybe spend the 1 or 2 weeks in between semester 1 and semester 2, or potentially over Christmas, just getting more of that, personal and professional development, and just widening your thought process to other areas of health. And we have got that little dot point in there. Obviously, with the current coronavirus, COVID-19 restrictions and overseas travel, it most likely will be very restricted, not only for this semester or next semester, but potentially for next year and a half. But we're hoping to get as much exchange back up and running as possible. As I mentioned before, with our teaching staff being practitioners in their field, I like to say if that your teachers haven't practiced or have practiced, or are practicing or have practiced, they've either published or are publishing work. So a lot of our academic staff, as I mentioned before, a lot of our degrees are evidence supported or evidence based, and this is really supported with the industry, where you've got that opportunity to go out, see what people are actually doing, what research is up and coming, what's sort of influencing, the areas of exercise physiology or the areas of podiatry. And a lot of your staff, for my example, one of my unit coordinators is actually a board member on Exercise and Sports Science Australia, which is the accrediting body for my degree. So that you're getting up-to-date knowledge, making sure that when you graduate, you will be able to find a job. And moving on to that one as well, with research in particular, for this slide, I always like to talk about, again, one of my personal unit coordinators. If we can go to the next slide, Sinead, where Tony Shield, great guy, actually invented the Nord board. So this is specific to the exercise area. But if you've ever done a Nordic hamstring exercise where you sort of lower your weight just with your hamstrings, one of my lecturers actually invented this machine where you can measure the forces in Newton produced by your hamstrings, not only for performance-based exercises, so implemented, with football teams in the UK, AFL teams here in Australia, and rugby league, but also for preventative measures, seeing if having weaker hamstring, or if it's unilateral, if one's stronger than the other, are you at a higher risk of injuring yourself? And obviously, flip side of that, if you strengthen those muscles, are you going to be at a less of a chance of obviously rupturing or tearing one of your hamstrings? That's obviously exercise specific, but across all your degrees, you'll find they love popping into the lectures, that your lecturers and your tutors will be currently doing research, publishing PhDs and stuff like that. And I'll pass back over to Sinead.
Thanks, Quinn. I have to apologize. I am not the most amazing at Workcast or Zoom PowerPointing, so I'm very sorry if this has decreased your experience with us today. I hope that you can just move on with me as we talk about the two campuses we have today. So the first one is Gardens Point. I'm always going to be biased about Gardens Point because this is where both my biomedical science and my law degree is based. As you can see on the bottom left of the screen here, this is our massive Q lab. So this is in our Q block. It is called Q440. It is over 100 meters squared. And as you can see, there are lots and lots of students in this room. And this does not actually detract from your experience in the classroom, because in the room, there are actually noise cancelling silencers. So you can have multiple classes going on at the same time. You can see on the benches that we have all the most up-to-date, amazing equipment. Each student has their own microscope. We have spectrophotometers for determining awesome different things like blood levels, pathogen levels, whether or not a person is infected with a virus. As you move on to the bottom middle, so our chemistry pharmacy students actually get to practice their own handing out prescriptions in our own pharmacy on campus. So our students can actually do prac on campus, which is absolutely awesome. Our pharmacy students get to work at Gardens Point, actually making up their own pills and working with different compounding machines. It's absolutely amazing. In the top left, we have our medical imaging students. So you can see that we have multiple facilities for lots of medical imaging students. They get to work together. They start off taking pictures of things as a banana in their first week. Obviously, you can't put a brand new medical imaging student working on a live patient. So they work up, and this is a really great, safe way to ensure the students get a whole-rounded practical experience. In the top right-hand corner, we have our radiation therapy students and their classrooms. Unfortunately, because radiation MRIs are way too big, heavy, and expensive to be put onto a campus, students still get the same 3D virtual experience, which totally equips them for their prac and going into the real world. In the bottom right, you actually see what's called an anatomage table. Essentially, it is a giant iPad, not Apple product, but it's a totally interactive touchscreen. And you can see that the student has put on the nervous system as well as the skeletal system, and I think this is the gastrointestinal system. So basically, there are heaps of different systems in the body, and the student can see which systems are going where just by pressing a button, and then they can see how these interact with the other systems and work on a live, see what a live patient would look like. It's an amazing way to understand the anatomy of the human body. So our other campus is Kelvin Grove. This is the campus that has a student accommodation. They're about 10 minutes apart, but our health students here actually get to do what's called Trauma Week. So you can see in the top left screen, these are our paramedic students. What we do is we stimulate like roadwork accidents, building collapses, what would happen if there was an earthquake. Now, paramedic students get to put themselves into all of these different situations so that they can understand and get to use their skills in all of those situations for which they will be working in the real world. We have our actual clinical facilities. So this is for our nursing and paramedic students. As you can see in this screen here, bottom second to the left, there is what is called, this is not a real life person, this is called our sim man. So he is over $100,000. And our nursing students get to practice, and our paramedic students get to practice on him, injecting different drugs, taking temperatures, working with this patient. And our, as you can see here, the assessment or the unit coordinator can actually coordinate and code this patient to have particular diseases or an injury or to be feeling a certain way, so that our nursing and paramedic students get to interact with almost a real life patient before they go into the real world. So this is amazing. It's really another great way to safely improve your experience and understand what's going on. You can see here in the bottom right, we've got this brand new stadium last year or the year before. It's absolutely amazing. Fits heaps of students. It's a great way for our exercise students, exercise and sports students, and clinical exercise physiology students to actually practice running different exercises and just really getting to know what it's like to work in the real world before they go and get a job. So hopefully you guys got a little bit of an understanding about what both campuses offer. Just one more quick thing. Up here at H block, you can see top right, this is our brand new biomedical science lab over at Kelvin Grove. It's absolutely amazing. We also have wet labs where you get to work with cadavers. And each of these is totally equipped and safe to work with various infectious pathogens and viruses, but also to work with things like stem cells. All right, so that's some of the formal stuff out of the way. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We're going to look at a couple of just frequently asked questions that Quinn and I both get quite often as health students at QT. So let's start with the first one. What motivated me to study a health degree? So for me, I really wanted to help people. And I was also really interested in biology and cells. I loved biology in high school, but only the medicine side. And I figured that I could help people by doing a biomedical science degree, by trying to improve what we know. So trying to understand viruses and our medicines and genetic diseases so that I could advance that science and help someone else in that way. What about you, Quinn?
I like to think that I'm quite a personal young gentleman. And so I found that in my degree in particular, in clinical exercise physiology, it's quite hands-on in the patient journey as opposed to some other degrees, obviously working in the exercise field. As a general rule, I might see a patient, 2-3 times a week, whereas some other health professionals, a GP, for example, you may not see, for 2 or 3 months at a time unless something's particularly ailing you. So I thought that for me, wanting to, interact with my clients a lot more, build that rapport, and obviously use exercise as a treatment. That's obviously the foundation of the degree. But I found this was a lot better chance for me to actually, again, help people like Sinead said, but actually get to know them as well and step them through that patient journey.
Awesome. Yeah, so you guys can see that there are heaps of different, well, at least 2 different reasons to motivate someone to do a health degree. So next question, why did I choose QT? So for me, the first place I heard about QT was actually my older sister. She was doing paramedics at QT, and she told me, she said, Sinead, make sure you consider QT because the biomedical research that they're doing there is just absolutely amazing. So I was seriously considering QT for a biomed law degree, especially because QT is one of the only universities that offers that double degree. However, I was living in northern New South Wales in Kingscliff at the time. So I was really not prepared at the time to do that 2.5-hour commute to university. So I was still weighing up some other options, but then QT offered me a scholarship, and I thought, well, if you're willing to give me a scholarship, then I'm willing to make that time and to actually travel to campus. So those are a couple of reasons why I chose QT. What about you, Quinn?
Yeah, pretty similar. Initially for me, coming from the Gold Coast, so it seems we're both not Brisbane locals. Back in 2016, when I was researching a few options, clinical exercise physiology was only really offered, I think, at 2 places in Brisbane and maybe 1 on the Gold Coast. And I sort of chose it on a whim because I also was lucky enough to be awarded a scholarship, which is always a good incentive. But I found that when I came up here and actually visited the campuses when I was doing a bit of research, that I just loved the community. I love the Kelvin Grove Urban Village, where it's not just a university. You've got, a Woolworths through there. The Domino's Pizza, it's got the health clinics, which I had a look at as well. And it just felt like, as cliche as it sounds, or as corny as it sounds, I just like the vibe or the energy at QUT. But also, that having that scholarship opportunity as well was a big incentive.
Yeah, agreed. If someone's going to offer you money, it's pretty hard to turn that down. So what advice do I have for someone who is thinking of studying a health degree? My advice is that there are so many health degrees out there. There are so many different ways to help people. It's really difficult to try and pinpoint which one you want to do. For me, I actually wanted to get into medicine. I got the OP, I was preparing to get in, and even with that OP1, I still didn't make the cut. I was pretty devastated, but then I started actually looking at alternative courses. And then I realized by comparing the subject list that medicine students do and the subject list that a biomed law student did, that I actually didn't like as many of the medical subjects that they were doing. I wasn't prepared to work with patients. I wasn't prepared to work with blood and sores and those sorts of things. I have a really queasy stomach. And I realized that I actually liked like 95% of the subjects that biomed law students were doing. So if you're trying to come up with you've got 3 or 4 degrees and you're not sure which one to do have a look at those individual subjects that students do, because it's a really good indicator if that's what you want to, that's what you'll enjoy for the next 3-4 years of your life, and as well as a career. Quinn, do you have any advice?
That last point that you sort of touched on, I 100% agree with. It's very important that in health in particular, pick something that you've got a passion or an interest in. like Sinead said, they're very specific degrees, and whether or not you're going to be patient-centered or community-centered or more the research side, it's important that, you know, whatever you're going to do for the next 3-4 years when you're studying and obviously working in that area, that you can enjoy it. And this is reflected obviously in the practical or practicum, depending on if you also have to get those external hours, those opportunities. For some degrees like nursing, you might do your first year, and in the second semester you find out that your first placement block is going to be with elderly patients, and you're going to have to learn to give them a wet bath on the bed, and they're going to be naked. And if you don't feel like as a practitioner you're able to work in that environment, you've got that opportunity to learn that potentially that hands-on isn't for you, and you can move into another health area. So definitely, I always just say, again, a cliche, pick something you're going to be interested in, because health is quite specific, and obviously when you're working with people, you don't want to just be doing it to get through, sort of thing.
100%. I totally agree. My math PE teacher in high school gave me this advice. He said, do what you would do if money wasn't an issue. And that totally applies to health, because you cannot be giving someone a wet bath if you're not comfortable doing it. So definitely think about that. What do you wish, or what do I wish I'd known before I started studying? The number one thing I wish I'd known is that it's okay to have no idea what you want to do. So although I did legal studies and biology in high school and moved into biomed law, I literally just did that because I thought they were the same. I had two passions, one in biology, one in legal, law and justice. So I just moved into that. I didn't know if I wanted to be a researcher. I didn't even know if I wanted to be a lawyer. I had no idea. So when I was in university, I tried doing some research programs, and I tried getting a job at a law firm to see which one I liked. And that's how I realized I didn't want to do those things. And I've slowly done some assignments on bioethical issues. And I've slowly realized exactly what I want to do. So number one piece of advice, or number one thing I'd wish I'd known, is it's okay to change your mind. I know so many people who have started doing a degree and then swapped to something else that's better suited to them. It's totally okay to change your mind. That's something I definitely wish I'd known. So Quinn?
Yeah, and mine's more just a general rule. Doesn't necessarily have to be health related, but I always say see as many opportunities as you can. University is its own little bubble in between sort of high school or whatever work you've come from, and then obviously the workforce. See as many opportunities, make as many friends as possible, even if it doesn't have to be 10s or 20 people, but see if you can buddy up with someone, not necessarily in your degree, maybe in a social club or society if you want to play social netball or volleyball like I do. And just, I like the analogy that it's a lot easier to fill your plate with lots of things at the start of your degree, and if it becomes too unbearable, sort of taking things off that plate. But if you start with, really just study and travel, and then you find it's going to be a lot more difficult once you've settled into that habit to be able to add in, clubs and societies, or I suppose that's the other stuff available, or work opportunities and stuff like that. Seize anything that appears before you. Get heaps of emails with stuff that you should be signing up for, or could sign up for, I should say.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Quinn, there. That's really good advice. What have been my highlights of my experience at QT? My number one highlight was what I call my VRES, so my Vocational Research Experience Scheme. QT offers these VRESs for almost every degree in research. And they pay you around $2,000 for up to 160 hours of research. It's an amazing opportunity. I did mine at the Queensland Institute of Medical Research here at Hurston, next to Kelvin Grove, and I worked on a bacteria called Acintobacter baumannii. Unfortunately, there is a new strain of this bacteria that is completely antibiotic resistant. What that means is if you get it, there's pretty much nothing we can do for you, which is really, really sad. And I found this project and I joined on the project, and basically I just got to research for 5 weeks trying to combine different strands of DNA so I could make my own microorganism that was completely genetically modified, so I could compare this one to the original one to see what was actually making it antibiotic resistant. It was a really amazing experience. It was awesome to be able to contribute to this area of helping people. It was also really great to get paid for that experience. Quinn, do you have any awesome experiences?
I do. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I found that one of the best experiences that I've had at QT was that short-term study tour to Hong Kong. I suppose it was just a big eye-opener in terms of how the healthcare system in their country differs to in Australia, and how much more, I suppose, political influence the political environment there has on the healthcare system. So depending on, if they've got a more Liberal or Labor, to put it in Australian terms, what party is going to fund more to the healthcare system? Are they going to fund more the preventative measures? So, education, health and sport and exercise science, or is it going to be more medical funding? So they're going to wait for people to get sick, and they're going to put more money towards, GPs that are going to be able to help cure that. And obviously I was there, well, not obviously, but I was there in the middle of last year when it was a very, I'll say, live or vivid political environment. So I also got the highlight of that, not in a health area, but just learning, about a new political system when all those protests were going on as well. Plus, it was a little bit of a holiday as well, and getting to go to Disneyland was always fun. So
that's awesome. Quinn, did you get funding from QUT for that?
Oh yeah, so that was actually mainly supported through QUT. I was lucky enough to get, I suppose it was a bursary, not quite a scholarship. So I think in the end, even with my 4 days of holiday either side, I only paid probably $200 out of pocket for 2 weeks. So that included, travel to and from all the tourist spots. I went over to another country that was close by. I can't remember what it was. And obviously then actually travel to and from the health sites we went to and all the big government buildings and whatnot.
That's so awesome. It's so awesome that you are doing like a patient-centered degree, but you still get that really well-rounded experience of like how healthcare actually works. The next question is, what opportunity for practical learning experiences have I had? This is a great question. In my biomedical science degree, I do, with my law degree, I only do 2 biomedical science subjects a semester. Well, I did. And for each of those, I would have a sort of 1.5 hour lecture and then a 3-hour practical in the lab every single week. It was absolutely phenomenal. So everything that was we were learning in the lectures was being paired up in our labs. From week 1, I was learning how to pipette properly, how to use Bunsen burners properly, how to actually grow a pathogen that was highly infectious, but use it and manipulate it in a lab that was completely safe to my advantage. So I've already mentioned spectrophotometers. I've actually grown my own stem cells. This was an amazing experience for me because I love the idea of stem cells and how the embryonic stem cells that we can use have lots of bioethical issues related to them. So it was really awesome to just see and use my hands every single week to grasp that content that I was learning in the lecture. I've also worked with cadavers. If you don't know what cadavers are, they are donated human organs or entire bodies. It's an amazing learning experience. It means that when you're understanding how a specific respiratory disease affects the lungs, you can actually envision in your head what exactly is going on because you've seen those lungs before. You've seen how the different veins intertwine around them, what the muscle looks like. It's an absolutely phenomenal experience. Quinn, do you have any great practical learning experiences?
I've had a few similar to you. I very much enjoyed doing cadavers in our disease processes unit because, generally speaking, what goes wrong in the body is a lot more interesting than what's meant to go right. But aside from practicum, I found that the QUT Health Clinics, which is a very learning supported environment with real patients, being able to go in there for a 6-week intensive at the start of this year. I had a client that I looked after each week, got to, again, build some rapport, have a bit of a laugh each week, and hopefully when they came in, they were doing their home exercise programs. But I actually found it a great opportunity because it is learning centered. So you'll find in those degrees, if they're at the health clinics, for example, if you're, nutrition dietetics, podiatry, sport and exercise science, optometry, you're in an environment where you're allowed to make mistakes. You've got a supervisor there looking out for you, and it's very learning centered, as opposed to potentially when you go out on practicum, when you're near the end of your degree, when you're sort of expected to pretty much be an independent practitioner before you go out and graduate. So I found that was a very good opportunity for me to actually refine myself as a clinician.
Yeah, awesome. What Quinn's referring to, these health clinics are actually located on Kelvin Grove University campus. They're down here on Musk Avenue. We have clinics for optometry, podiatry, psychology, and essentially the whole purpose is to essentially provide services for patients, but also to allow our students to get that really safe learning environment where they can actually have a go at what they're doing in the real world. It's absolutely phenomenal. Also, if you're a patient there and you're a student, you also get awesome discounts on healthcare. So Another question is, how have my studies at QUT prepared me for the real world? So for me, I'm actually planning on going into academia, and biomedical science is centered around going into research in academia. It's great. It's taught me every single lab skill that I'm going to need to go into research. So although I'm not actually going into laboratory research, I have those skills where even if I was to go into something like Acinetobacter baumannii, so bacteria, or if I was going to viruses, or if I was going to yeast infections or genetic diseases, QUT has ingrained in me all those essential lab skills that I can use to transfer across to heaps of different information and industries. It's absolutely fantastic. It's also taught me like quantitative and qualitative research data, how to write a report, what to do, and actually just how to become an academic. So I'm really, really excited for my future in academia thanks to my QUT degree. Quinn, what about you?
Yeah, very similar to that. I'm actually doing a unit at the moment, not focusing on going into research, but as a graduate. So it's actually a business practice unit where we focus on the business side of things of being a health practitioner. So we learn all about stuff like Medicare, DVA, which is the Department of Veteran Affairs, and their different health schemes and payment schemes, as well as NDIS, which is specific to disability services and discounts, and how we're actually meant to manage that. Because obviously one side of things is what do you do as a clinician, how you're meant to help them get better and hopefully rehabilitate them, but also how you're meant to support yourself. There's resume writing tips, how to actually look through an employer's contracts just to make sure that you're not getting rorted, and making sure that you're going to be paid properly. And mentoring schemes. So I always make the joke to Justin Holland, who's my course coordinator, that I'm going to one day steal his job. I'm not. But he's offered to be a mentor for some students if they're never sure what they should be looking for in a contract. So it's very specific to what I'll be doing in 7 months time.
That's awesome. Another thing that I forgot I was going to say was this awesome subject I did called Advances in Medical Biotechnology. So it was my final unit for my biomedical science degree, and essentially I was to find a health problem in that was suffered by rural and regional Australians. For example, pregnant women who are living in rural and regional areas, they may not be able to have access to things like ultrasound. For me, I found that there were lots of different health issues targeted to people who just couldn't access healthcare. So it was really essential that I got to come up with this awesome new solution to a syphilis issue in regional and remote Australia, and just come up with an entire solution on my own, and then pitch it to actually a professional in the biomedical science world. And then we got ranked according to how well our pitch was, how well our solution was. Unfortunately for me, I classically included Wi-Fi as part of mine, and relying on Wi-Fi. And unfortunately, for people out there, they don't always have Wi-Fi. So it was a really eye-opening experience to understand how healthcare is accessed by all Australians. So that's another awesome way that QUT prepared me for the real world. Second last question, do I have any advice for future university students in such an uncertain time? For me, I finished my biomedical science degree last year, and all of my law subjects were online, or almost online anyway. So nothing has really changed for me at all. I've just got a little less work for the university, but my degree and the quality of my degree has stayed exactly the same. And I'm really thankful for that. What about you, Quinn?
Yeah, so I'll admit that my practicum experience in first semester was impacted. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go on my 6-week block down to the University of Canberra because it was interstate and obviously due to the impact. However, the university has been quite accommodating, and it has been rescheduled. Not the same block, unfortunately. I'll be going to Toowoomba instead, so just as far in my mind. But they've been able to accommodate 2 practical blocks in my second semester. So I'll still be getting the hours that I need for accreditation, and they've actually been really good at facilitating the entire cohort to make sure that we all graduate with proper accreditation, and that we're still going to be obviously job ready by the start of next year. So it is just a matter of being a little bit flexible at the moment, particularly in health, but it also means as a health industry, we're very needed at the moment, and you're probably going to be even more health and safety smart around what you're actually going to need to do when you go out into the workforce.
Yeah, that's great advice. Before we move on to this last question, I think Quinn and I would both agree that Even though there have been COVID restrictions that have affected university experiences, we still recommend to do exactly what you love and what you're passionate about, because that is the most important thing when it comes to deciding what you do for university. So finally, what do I do for fun at university? For me, I lived in Northern New South Wales for the first 3.5 years of my degree. So I really benefited from only going to university 2 days a week to do my classes. And I actually surfed approximately the other 5 days. But when I was on campus, I really appreciated how at exam time, there were free donuts, free Red Bull, this really cool ball pit that you could jump into, free pancakes, and there was also these really cute little baby farm animals and puppies from the RSPCA. And it was essentially just a time to de-stress from university, and it's really, really fun when you get to access those kind of things and when your university actually cares about your health and well-being. Quinn, what about you? Do you have any fun things you've done at university?
Look, I don't know if I can top puppies and pancakes prior to exam block. As I mentioned before, I do play social sports, so I love playing netball and volleyball. I'm quite competitive, so I don't know if my teammates enjoy it as much as I do. No, I'm kidding. I'm a lovely person to play with. But I'm also part of the Math Society, which is just like trivia nights and board games weekly, or the trivia nights are once a semester. I'm also a member of the College of Excellence, luckily enough, through my scholarship, and that's just a great social opportunity. It doesn't sound as pompous as it is. Sorry, it sounds more pompous than it is. It's just a great opportunity to make new friends across, different faculties, different year levels, and just being treated like an adult, I found was a fun thing at university. Straight away, you're on first name basis, and you've got this sort of responsibility that you wouldn't have possibly had at high school.
Yeah, Quinn and I are both student ambassadors here at QT, and I think we can both agree that we love our jobs. One of the fun things that we get to do as part of being a student ambassador is obviously talk to you guys, unfortunately not in person, but we love going out to schools and talking to kids and teachers about all the different things that university has to offer. We actually get to help you guys make an informed decision about what you're going to do, and also we get to talk about our experiences and our lives at university. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to QUT, consider becoming a student ambassador. It's a really, really fun experience. So for more information, we recommend you chat to our health virtual course booths. We have live academics. Please download our 2021 undergraduate health guide. There is all the information about the individual degrees, about the subjects you'll be doing, the HR requirements, the individual subjects, career and professional experiences that you can do, and of course, career outcomes. We have a couple of mini course seminars. Definitely watch the videos from our students and undergrads and take virtual tours.